We have
Now.
a podcast?
Oh, hey! Okay.
Wasted.
Now do it. Come on, Ben.
No. Welcome to the
Great
Dresden Files podcast. The Dresden Files podcast, where we podcast about the Dresden Files. Today, we're talking about... Oh, come on. Today, we're talking about Deadbeat. We're doing a reread of the whole series.
But first Christmas.
Well,
That's why I said occasional.
What?
Dude, Ben, we even talked about this, man. Did you not pay any attention to the pre-show? Come on.
This is Christmas
I'm
part
sorry,
3.
What was it? I had to mute the video. I was watching it. What was going on?
You know we're live, right? Like professionally.
Oh, privately, yes. So we're talking about conspiracies, you said, right? Was it conspiracies?
More or less. But first Christmas, and Colin gets to experience Christmas 2 weeks delayed.
Like
2 weeks.
Less than, more than. Yeah, more than. Holy shit.
Sort of news. We have the update. We have the update on the chapters he's done.
Yeah. Benjamin, you're fired.
As of January 17th, he's
That
up
was-
to chapter 41.
How many chapters are there?
More than 41.
I'm 60 to 70. Woo! Conspiracy theories.
No, it's going to be like somewhere between 50 and 55, like the last 3.
Nope. Everything happens in peace talks. You just can't fit it all in.
This is not going to be a Harry Potter 3 to Harry Potter 4 situation. I'm pretty sure.
No, that was 4 to 5. 5 was
4 is
four-
pretty
four-
big.
3 4 was pretty big, though, too.
1, 2, and 3 were novel, like just standard novel length, and then she started getting crazy.
And then 4 was like a weapon you bludgeon somebody with.
4, there
Just
was
wait
like,
till it gets-
20 chapters before we went to school.
The Dresden Files podcast, where we talk about Harry Potter. Okay,
So
so
we're going to
Harry
see someone
something.
open a gift.
Yes.
continue.
So I'm just going to go ahead and start opening things.
Keep talking
Go
so
for
the
it.
focus stays on you.
Huzzah!
Looks like a book.
Hamilton.
All of his shit was books. I was like, are you for real
All
right
I
now? Like,
asked for.
Tree hater.
And now Hamilton's awesome, and he's one of my favorite founding fathers.
Right.
But more relevant to us today,
Nice.
I have yet to get to this series, so that's exciting.
You hadn't read that one yet?
wow,
I know, I'm
yeah.
trying to write a whole stupid steampunk thing and whatever not. And
Well, and that's why I was like, I mean,
Uh.
you can read the thing, obviously, but
It's like, how have you? I mean, I understand maybe you didn't have a physical copy and you wanted the pretty version or whatever, but how have you not read that one yet?
if that camera was detachable, I could show you the stack of books in my closet that I have not gotten to yet, and the larger stack of books that I have.
Which has now just increased.
You're in for a treat though. Like that Jim Butcher guy, he can also write. I don't know who that Hamilton founding for Smoochy Moosh is.
He's just some guy who got shot.
And I did read Turnow's biography on George Washington, and he's a very good biographer. So I'm looking forward to that.
no, I was excited to see the Hamilton for the same reason, but obviously it's like you put a Jim Butcher book on your wish list and one of the Dresden Files people got you. Yeah.
That is true.
So it also helps that it is one of my favorite books, like, especially outside of the Dresden Files. Like, he wrote really good shit. So
Yeah, I mean,
No, I
it
didn't.
is really good. I mean, have you read the other series he's written?
Codex Alera, yes. I enjoyed
better
that.
than that.
Because I cannot get into that, and I really like Jim. Like I really want to, but goddamn,
Yeah.
I think it's
I got
the
stuck in
audiobooks.
four times, and I've booked four times. I'm not sure I can.
I
Try
think
it.
Codex Alera holds up really well, especially the first 3 or 4. And then by then you're just invested and you want to finish the series again. But again, I've never listened to the audiobooks, and I know you only do the audiobooks, so it is what it is.
I mean, how could it not hold up? It's Pokemon meets the Lost Roman Legion. So,
Yeah.
These
I
are
have to
2 of my
appreciate it.
favorite things.
right.
Well, the Pokemon.
I still
aspect
think
might
it's like
be, Lost Roman Legion. They're going to be lost forever.
Literally.
I feel like Pokemon's not really a good word to describe what he ended up with.
No, but it's his own words. So,
True.
Yeah.
It's started, but
It kind of started with that elemental spirit thing.
Yeah.
He started with the idea of Pokemon, and then they kind of went away from that. But
Yeah.
I enjoyed the series, and it's worth reading.
Yeah.
All I remember from book 1 is I swear there was some StarCraft Zergs on there.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, I've only read the one book myself, but that's kind of my understanding too. It's like, Pokemon, the Lost Legion fight the Zerg. So,
Okay,
Oh,
I don't remember
like
exactly what
Zombie
you
Zerg
said.
Bugborg. That's what I always said.
feel like he
zombies are
actually-
like Zerg, they're like bugs, they're like Borg. They're just
And
kind
he
of
made them too powerful.
The Zerg and the Borg are kind of the same trope, to be fair.
I think at some point
I've-
you described that the bugs in Codex Lyra were Borg-ish, and then he realizes what later the Zerg has to happen. I think he said that somewhere.
well,
yeah,
because
they feel completely alien to the setting, which I guess is probably the point. But
Yeah.
I don't think the blend came across too well with that setting. I would have preferred a different big bad personally, but he did it so well that I still appreciate it.
Do you prefer big bads like necromancers?
No,
Attempted a segue.
Oh well, what a great coincidence. Necromancers are what we're talking about tonight. We're bringing this podcast back to life. Let's see here. Oh, what kind of stuff we want to talk about for Dead to Beat, Book 7?
Dead people.
and how they get up again. That's my favorite part. So, like when they're dead and then they animate and start killing shit again. So,
I forgot how good a book it was. I think it's been a while. So good.
it's spoilers. I mean, come on, how do you
spoil
forget
everything.
that shit? Like, honestly,
I haven't forgotten Sue. It's not bad. It's like, in general, the book is really good.
right.
The
It's-
storylines, like we talked about this in some of the others, like where it was like it felt like too much was going on, or like they were kind of not connected. It was like I don't think that was the case here.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, this
it-
one was much more straightforward.
Right.
While still introducing a lot of elements that carry through.
Yeah, a lot
A
of
lot.
things that get introduced into Deadbeat last forever and ever and ever, and
mean, there's no one-
retroactively cause more conspiracies.
Yeah, I mean the Sheila thing is still paying off, right? You have the Lash Sheila, and then it just becomes Lash, and then Lash dies. But then you got Bonnie, and now Bonnie's Mini Bob. So some of this stuff really continues to pay off throughout the rest of the series.
Right.
I was actually thinking when I was reading this that it was supposed to be. It's the first hardcover, so it had to be epic. And so I was thinking, is this a good entry point? That's what I was thinking about when I was reading the book again this time. Would this be a good entry point for somebody in the series? And I don't think it would be, because it covers so much.
Tried
that
with
happened
also
before.
like highlighting the fact that this is book 7 out of a series that's already established, but here is kind of introductory to the world in his conversation with Butters about magic and people disappearing.
Yeah.
I think he did in the sense that he doesn't go too deep in some of the backstory, but I'd be curious if there are fans out there who did start with book 7, because there are very obviously things that get touched on in previous books. I mean, Cassius' entire character is like, P.S. we haven't seen him for 2 books, and he got fucked up last time, and all you get is that there is some kind of history, because Dresden's like, I told you, next time I see you, I'll kill you. Of course, he was getting carved up at the time, but there's obviously history there. There's clearly a backstory. So even if you didn't know you were 7 books in, like if you liked it, what you read, and went to go look it up, and you're like, shit, I got to go read all the other books now. And
Honestly,
that's why I'm just like, save people the effort and start with 1.
Well, there are plot threads that it picks up all the way back from book 2, right? So you have the alphas show up. He has to explain about the alphas. You have the Vampire War, which actually has to explain about that. You have the is there a fair,
You
you
talk
have
about the White Council, Senior Council.
Yeah. You have Mavra. You have Thomas is a brother. And then you have
Mad.
Mad. We have so much stuff that he has to explain that happened in the previous books that there's a lot on your plate if you're a reader coming to the series new.
Having not started on book 7 personally, I don't know how I would feel about it if it was my first book, but he touched on so many things. It's not a bad layer of groundwork if you did have to start back over again. Like you'd recognize Mab as a name. You'd recognize, the fairy godmother thing that he briefly mentions in book 1. Alphas. And then he's talking about like, okay, Cassius is coming up again. You started in book 5, but the backstory of what Cassius is wanting is also being explained with Sheila.
Right.
And so it's like on 2 different plot points, he is describing the same history.
Yeah, and that can be difficult for a writer to pull off in terms of having all that stuff show up in a book and have to be explained, and you hear it through the narration, and you have to just accept that you're being spoon-fed these details. My dad's kind of a picky reader, I guess. Like, he reads serious, great works of all time. I recommended the first Codex Alera book, and he's like, I couldn't get through the first chapter because it was just so much talking about the world rather than, it's done in a very ham-fisted way, and that was his opinion. I didn't find that problem at all, but that can be a problem if you have so much. It's like a learning curve. It's just like a learning wall, and then you hit that, and it would be kind of a lot to digest. Though, like you said, it would be a good point to come back to the series predetermined threads that are also established for the future. So,
right. I mean, it's a nexus point of the story, right? So, we get the tidbits that we saw Cal and Kumori in book 3, that's where we technically met them. Like you said, tying a bunch of stuff from, book 1, book 2, book 3, book 5, all into it. And this shit is still paying dividends, I liked also that, Lashiel was very foreshadowed in, book 6, for example, and very heavily in the beginning of book 7. And then, you finally get, the whole lid blown off of that, where like the Butters scene where that gets uncovered, it's just so heavy to me every time. Where it's like Butters just wandering around in the dark and Dresden doesn't even know any better. And it's like in Proven Guilty. I'm excited for that next because it's the whole like, Harry, where's your blasting rod all over again, where it's like when people fuck with Harry's mind and he's like, what, my whole world is shattered, like what is going on? So you just get to see so much shit kicked off, so
seeing Sheila in this reread is very satisfying if you're prepared and know already about Lash, because you meet Sheila, then you find out about Lash in that hot tub scene. And so you have both of those being introduced in that order, but you get enough interplay with both of them that you should be able to pick up the little hints. Boss.
This is one of those things where it's like better on rereads at least. Kind of like Skin Games, right? With Gray and Harry.
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 things in Skin Game with Goodwin Gray.
Mm-hmm. And Sheila is what allowed Malcolm to come in. Because he said they crossed a line, and it was because she did that illusion character of Sheila.
You think that's what it was?
Okay. Yeah, he meets Sheila, and then he goes to sleep after reading the book that he got from Box. He talks to his father, and they have coffee together, and then it continues on. Malcolm was only able to do that because Sheila.
Right. I know she had broken the rules, right? Like she had broken the balance, but I had assumed that it might have even been earlier because she has to break the rules in order to get an in, right? So this whole her coming out thing is that she's been manipulating his subconscious the entire time, including subtly powering his shit with Hellfire. She's been amping up his magic the whole time anyway, and that's how he's able to flip the car on Cowl. But I don't remember if that was the first time he conscientiously used it.
The thing with the wall is where, like, the mind wall is where the first time he decides to use it, not an instinct.
Right.
It's her to him directly.
Yeah, but you get the sulfur smell at the time, and that's where he's like, Bob, something's supercharging my magic. And Bob's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, I'm not. And that's because Sheila's just doing it for him. He didn't get a choice. And so she had been breaking the rules for a little while. Because I think you get a taste of that in Blood Rights as well, like with the wind and a few other things, because he has that whole interchange with Kincaid, and Kincaid's like, man, I've really never seen a wizard cut loose before, and he's like, buddy, you still haven't, and while his staff is smoldering, and I think like that's one of the times where he's like, wait a minute, it's never done that before, So you get this foreshadowing, and she's obviously been breaking the rules. So that's why I was curious. You thought the illusion itself was over the line.
Yeah, directly making that kind of contact, and therefore manipulating what he was seeing. He's no longer able to make a full conscious choice of things because he thinks that there's someone else he needs to protect.
That's fair.
And like the whole illusion, I think that's the issue of crossing the line. And that what gets me curious now is that, where is Malcolm, and why is Sheila Blashiel's actions allowing Malcolm to make contact with Dresden? Does that mean that he's in league with Uriel, or he's a ghost, or he's just somewhere?
I think he's definitely part of Uriel's brute squad, where like he's working with Carmichael and Papa Murphy, right? So like I think it's all part of the same team, same kind of job.
But that is very strange, because Malcolm never seemed like someone who would hang around.
It's still an open question, right? Like, do you take him at his word that, he totally died with an aneurysm in his sleep, or was he fucking murdered? Because
even if he was murdered, he just doesn't seem like someone who would hang around. He seemed to be content with the idea of passing on, at least in the way I've always seen his character. Maybe
somebody took him from his boy. Like
that could be,
but
I mean, yeah, it could be, or he could be. He passed on, was like, and then, hey, I got something for you. Yeah, I'll help out. I'll help him out. It could be.
I mean, even if he did go through that big door of Uriel's and faces whatever is beyond that, that doesn't mean that he can't come back. We just don't know what that door means.
Well, it would be implied that if Lash is set up with the big bad, if that's her side of things, that says something about either that faction of the Denarians or the Denarians in general, as opposed to Harry, which we kind of already knew, but there's the temptation now to think of the Denarians as trying to save the world in a misbegotten way. Maybe they're anti-heroes, maybe they're not.
I'm not tempted.
There's at least three sides of this. There's the Uriel White God, there's Nicodemus, four. There's White Council, and there's the Mab and Margaret Le Fay and all that. I think there's at least potentially four categories.
I mean, there's a lot more than that.
Yeah, there's more than that.
And yet, in the end, there's really only two: Team Reality, Team Not Reality.
Right. I mean, kind of yes, kind of no, because like I'm not convinced that Lord Wraith knows enough to be competently helping Team Reality, and so it's like so for example, like what if Margaret hadn't tried to escape, and what if she hadn't given him the curse and whatever? Do you really think he was going to wind up on the same side as Mab in defending the wall? And
no, especially if he's getting protection from an outsider, he seems pretty firmly in the Black Council, in league with type people.
That's fair. Yeah, that's.
I mean, he wanted to be a player. It didn't say for who.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like someone like in all the chaos, I'll be able to just get my own realm bigger, my own more power bigger.
Right.
And causing that chaos to happen is probably.
I mean, it's pretty much the same thing Nicodemus wants to do, except he wants to do it for reality. He's the same. He doesn't want to save the world because he's altruistic. He wants to be king of the ashes. He's happy to see it all burn down as long as hell, whoever is the one in charge now.
True motivation. I mean, like, yes, he's on the side of Team Reality, but what he's wanting to do with it, I think,
he's on the side of Team Reality essentially by dint of the way Harry says he defends America. All his stuff is here. That's about as far as it goes.
Can't blow up Reality. That's where I keep all my stuff. Yeah. Fair enough. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I think Malcolm is part of Uriel's crew, like, or at the very least, Uriel sent him because it's the exact same thing when we see him in Ghost Story and several other times. Like Uriel shows up or sends somebody to balance the scales. He's the archangel with purview over Harry at the moment, I guess. I thought it was interesting that like for that whole Malcolm thing, like it's awesome. It's a great bit of storytelling. Harry gets the feels, all of that stuff. But presenting Lashiel as the Jabberwocky out in the forest, too. And one of the other tidbits that I put in my notes for it as well is that, Harry's like, oh, this is much better than my normal dreams, a whole lot less tentacles and screaming. And it's like, why do you have tentacles and screaming dreams? What exactly has happened to you? Because it's like, wait a minute, this is book 7, man. You have had 0 encounters with tentacles that we've seen. So where's that
the
coming
thing
from?
that ate Madge's face in Blood Rites, I think technically had tentacles. Weird energy tentacles, but I think technically.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Because the walker, it like came out and pierced her. That makes a lot more sense. So
there's enough mundane things he could have run across that aren't book worthy that still had tentacles.
Yeah, even Michael says that in the next book. Fangs, tentacles. He's just thinking he's talking about regular demons.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and then this book also has the first mention of old ones, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's the first mention of the outsiders.
The outsiders.
And the old ones specifically.
I think it specifically says the old ones.
Right. Well, it says it both of them. Same one. The outsiders were a race of foot soldiers that served the old ones, the ancient gods, to run the place.
Right.
Yes.
Is this the first time that we have direct stated indication that the White Council is being eaten from the inside out?
I believe so.
Right.
I think you get a couple of comments where it's like the White Council either isn't what it used to be or it's not whatever, and it's like Harry's like, because I think Elaine brings some of that to the table, right? And Harry's like, you don't gotta fucking tell me, but
so mostly it's just the fact that they're as untrustworthy as any group of people.
Well, kind of, but yeah, it's book 3 as well, right? Because Simon gets betrayed. Cal fakes his own death, but so like obviously there's somebody working on the inside there, and they're assumed that they died because fucking everybody died at Archangel. But
every time I reread this book, I am more certain that Cal is Petrovich.
Right.
I'm still not sold on that.
That's
okay. Oh God!
All the other ideas are terrible.
Right. No, it's true. Like, yeah.
I kind of want him not to just be somebody. I'd rather have him just, if he's going to be somebody, just have to be a new character.
He's essentially going to be that, even if it's Petrovich. That's what everyone complains about. Like, he's not important enough.
It's the Lamar effect is my problem. Is Lamar shows up once in this book, and it's fine. But then because he had a paramedic named Lamar shows up again for like a second.
A second. He's like
I know.
barely mentioned.
I don't like that. I don't like this.
Jim is a lazy writer.
Yeah,
if he put it in there, he's going to use it. By his own admission.
No reason. Hunger Games is the same thing. Anyway.
How dare you reuse elements that you reintroduced or introduced
cheaply? Like,
how is it?
But it pays off.
Him being Simon is the maximum lever of leverage against Ebenezer. And so that's why I think Ebenezer, it's either going to go down in peace talks because everything happens in peace talks, or Ebenezer's going to survive peace talks because that shit still needs to happen. He needs to be betrayed by his dead best friend. Come on. There are very few things that I feel like I've seen from 1,000 miles away, and that's one of them. The one that I can't put a finger on is Kumori, because all the ideas are terrible. But you could go for the double betrayal because I think he specifically says that Kumori feels like somebody he should know, and that's where you get the whole like Elaine theories. But it just occurred to me like he knows Martha Liberty too, so it'd be crazy for something like that. It's like, guess what? 2 fucking senior council people.
Right. The only reason I wouldn't say Martha Liberty is because the way that they mentioned her actions as the Red Court was attacking, like she was there, she was doing a thing. So Kumori can't be in 2 places at once, hopefully.
That's fair.
I feel like Kumori's, like the way she speaks, it's not like Elaine at all.
Oh yeah, no, and yeah, there's definitely an old world style there, but it's like, but who else? Like, Dresden hasn't met a lot of female wizards, right?
I still like the idea of Morgan's dead girlfriend.
No, sure, and I think that's
Dead,
fantastic.
because she was with Petrovich. She was at
There-
Archangel.
Right. There's 0% evidence. Like, we've got one throwaway line from Morgan that he cared about somebody who was at Archangel. Morgan could have been, it could have been a bro. Like, it could have been somebody he went through. Like, there's no indication of gender there, right? Just that
No,
Morgan's
but-
pissed off that Harry somehow, well, because he kicked off the war, right? Harry kicked off the war that got his special someone dead, you know? But yeah. I mean, and
Could've been like
technically,
Carlos and Harry.
That keeps making more sense to me, though, if it was Cal, Komori, Petrovich, and whoever at Archangel, when she says Cal has dealt with death curses before. Plenty of them.
that's fair. Yeah.
And it just seems like this gigantic highlighting thing of like, he's Petrovich because they mentioned how many death curses were being thrown at Archangel.
So, yes, but I mean, specifically, they talk about it in Summer Night, right? That there was like one big death curse that was almost certainly him and his squad, and they took like 20 vampire nobles or some nonsense, you know, or maybe I'm mixing that with the Morgan fight later, but yeah, I mean, some cataclysmic unleashing of energy happened there. And so like, that's one of the things that it's hard for me to figure out. I mean, he would have had to have had some kind of cover, you know, either he opened a gate and snuck out the back wall, his apprentices died, or whatever, you know, like there still had to be a huge fuck ton of energy unleashed there somehow. We just haven't seen anything other
as a
than
bad guy and all of his apprentices threw their death curses at him. That might cause something like that.
Well, he only had one apprentice, and she's named, I think, in the RPG handbook is like Larissa Yevchenko or something like that.
That's a thing.
So that would be Elaine. I mean, Komori potentially.
But and there's also like apparently you don't have to have only one apprentice, considering they explicitly state Justin.
Well, but also specifically before we get too far off the tracks, there they talk about the Archangel Brute Squad. So he clearly had other wizards with him.
Right, but those were, well, at a minimum, those were wardens. Because they mentioned that in another, I don't remember if it was a word of Jim or if it was whatever, but, you know, he mentioned the wardens out of the Brute Squad.
But I'm just
out of
saying,
Archangel.
I mean, yeah, I called them apprentices, but I imagine he was the dude in charge, senior council member. Like, he may not have been teaching them per se, you know, in that role. Like, they weren't brown robes, but, you know, they were his wards or whatever, for lack of a better.
Yes, it was his group.
The next thing that always makes it seem like someone Petrovich level was the fact that he says, "I want to know what has everyone so scared about you."
Right.
And so he would have been there when Harry was on trial the first time.
Right.
And the fact that Ebenezer was the one that was, you know, and knowing that he would be the Blackstaff and all things like that. And then later he says this line of, "Too bad, I thought you were ready for the heavyweight division."
Oh,
like, what the fuck do you mean by that?
Yeah.
He's like, what are you? I thought you were ready for something.
Yeah. Right. But, well, and that's where it starts to get derailed. Because like I remember him being disappointed. I remember that, you know, heavyweight division, but going back through the lens of what's the Black Council been doing this whole time, specifically for this reread. And so it's like, so Cal's been pulling punches where he's been throwing credible threats at Dresden, but threats that he knew Dresden was going to overcome so that Dresden would power up so that he could, for what? And
to create more chaos, more of a nuclear bomb type of situation.
Yeah,
he's priming it,
right? You get your you get the hero all bothered, and he becomes like the bad guy.
Well, and if it helps, as far as Petrovich goes, we found out in the last AMA that he's an Earth Mage, so we know he's strong. And it was specifically mentioned he and his people were hell on wheels in a fight. Quote unquote.
What do we know about Yoshimo? She shows up in this book. Is she Komori?
Is she what?
Komori.
How would she be Komori?
Yeah,
she don't show up the same place.
Didn't she get stabbed through the? She was one of the wardens that got hurt.
Yeah.
But then, does Komori actually show up when he confronts Cowl?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
She's holding the knife to him again.
Because yeah. And Ramirez, his like an entire chapter of how he can't use his Ramirez charm because, what if she's ugly and just all this. Like Ramirez is going to deal with her because Dresden's clearly, the stronger wizard out of the two of them. Like, just did you read the ending? No.
Yes, I did. I was watching.
I know. I mean, like I said, though, it's like Harry knows like 5 female wizards, right? So if she's familiar to him somehow,
it's not going to be Ancient Mai or something.
Yeah, it's like it's either because you feel familiar because you were taught by Petrovich, who worked with Ebenezer, like one of those, like you feel familiar because you got the same kind of style of magic, or he directly knows her somehow, which really fucking narrows the suspect pool. That's all I'm saying. Like those are your kind of options there, I think. So
yeah,
it does sound a little bit more like a name, whereas Cal is just I have a mask.
Kumori means hooded in Japanese, I think, or
Oh,
clouded.
it literally is just name.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Okay. It's the same type of
in
thing.
Japanese, so maybe she is Yukio or Yoshino.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
that's
but
the connection.
You're not supposed to use a language that you're fluent in, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, but she's just using the Japanese word for Cal as her moniker, not as her spell, right? Does she use Japanese? Do we actually get what her? Because Cal seemed Germanic, right? Like
What did he say?
Dorosh.
Right. That's not. I don't think that's Germanic. That sounds more Eastern European.
Like Germany,
Well, why don't we ask the
more
Europeans?
Like Serbian.
Seems to be an expert on these things.
Yes, you've decided he's Bulgarian today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gaurush does not speak Germanic.
Sounds
No.
Slavic at the least. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So
Maybe even
like
Bulgarian.
Russian.
I didn't actually realize until this read through that the wobble in their voice is them using magic to change, like disguise their voices.
Right. And then that I had that epiphany, and then the catching on between that and Billy saying, I got super close, but I couldn't get a smell. And it's like, man, I'm an idiot. How, like, it must be one of those details that I'm like, that's very neat, but I'm not going to do anything with that. So I forget it or something because it's so obvious in the book that it's like, they're clearly masking their identity through magic.
And they feel the need to, so.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because they'd be recognized because they're someone who would be known.
Right.
Like
or either way, it's just good. It's a good habit.
Like a dead person.
They've been in the background of everything for the first 6 books, more or less. So,
yeah,
gotta hide yourself somehow.
Well, not really, though, right? Because what did they have to do with death masks? So
good question.
Yeah, and I mean, blood rights, kinda.
They took the dogs.
Right. Yeah. Right. But still, like that was more like,
and death masks. I guess you could argue this, their involvement with the Red Court. I'm not saying they were,
paying dividends,
like the string pullers and all of them, but their footprints are in.
Sure. Yeah.
Something. They're not the direct necessarily. They may have been responsible for Aurora, but generally speaking, that was a self-contained big ass problem that they may have just kind of brushed against.
Well, so here's a thing too, right? So I'm reaching a little bit, and so it might be just crazy theory, but they talk about how, like, I think there's like a line at one point how they talk about how the way has been prepared for this working for a long time, right? For the Dark Hallow, like they've been preparing. Clearly, the Corpse Taker has been working at least for months to get in with, the guy who's got the Cahokian artifacts and all that stuff, so that she's got a font of old human necromantic energy, whatever, that she can pull from. Gravain's got some similar kind of source because you see them finally employed at the end and whatnot. So I'm curious, like, what Cal was doing, in advance, because I think even Cal mentions that, and it might be alongside his whole, talking about he's the one that hexed down the power grid and radio waves and several other more subtle technologies. So that one made me call out to, like, maybe that was the feds, where it's like microwave, communication or some other nonsense. But it's like, I wonder if the first several books, like that's part of what he's doing, is that he's been laying that groundwork, and that's part of why they're all in Chicago, is because Cowell has been doing the brunt of the work for it, but the others at least recognize, the opportunity there and show up.
I mean, that's a lot of what they were doing in the first few books of making Chicago more unstable, like especially Grave Peril. They were deliberately weakening the border between reality and the Never Never. Right. So those kinds of things of increasing the amount of dead people or the ease it is to call dead people back to life, that's a lot of what they were doing in creating instability.
Well, and what's interesting is that they generally don't care about getting the books other than keeping them away from everybody else.
Right. Yeah, they already
knew. Or they ended up getting Bob, for reasons at the end, right? So maybe they knew they didn't need the books.
Another point of him being Petrovich, because he would know that Justin had Bob and Kemmler and that whole connection there.
That's a good point.
That's pretty solid, actually.
Is that because he was a Kemmlerite, he knew about Bob. He knew Justin got Bob. He knew Dresden at least had the opportunity to get Bob, because all he knew is that when he went to Justin's burned down place, I'm crazy theory town right now, right? So he goes to Justin's burned down place and Bob is missing. So he assumes the apprentice got him. Yeah, that tracks. That's super circumstantial, but really solid circumstantial.
There's next level tinfoil if you say that it is Petrovich, but it's because Kemmler switched bodies with Petrovich.
Maybe, but I mean, as Bob and Mab and Mac and anybody who knows, basically Kemmler is a psycho. Like, you don't keep that kind of crazy under wraps. Like Cowell is way too calm and calculated in comparison. So, and not to say that Kemmler didn't have to be some kind of devious as well, because he spent over 100 years setting up World War I. But like, but Kemmler is a nut job, in comparison. Like Mab called him a psycho.
Kemmler probably already did a dark color. Dark.
Well, and I think he was either perfecting it or trying it in World War II, right? World War II seemed to be like an opportunity for him, because that's how they found out he was still alive, is that he was running around animating mass graves, at the various centers, right? The concentration camps and everything. So, and that's such an awesome use of fantasy. Like, unfortunately, it's a very terrible, horrible, tragic thing
straight out of Warhammer.
But yeah, it's very much like, like I had a buddy who was like, I'm going to create a fantasy world where like everything is dead except for the heroes. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to play a team of necromancers, because it sounds like there are raw materials everywhere. Like, Yeah.
So
and
what the hell was Mavra doing today?
Like today?
Well, just like what I mean, it's so suspicious that she says, hey, bad things happening, get yourself involved, and then she disappears for like 10 books.
Right. I couldn't even start to speculate, because like your two options are she needed the word because she could use something in it, or she needed to keep it away from somebody. But it seems like she could have been, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be Mavra if she was lighter handed, but like,
she could have destroyed it if she didn't want anyone to have it.
Well, she couldn't be charitable to Dresden. She couldn't say, hey, just so you know, a bad thing's going to happen, because he wouldn't believe her. So she has to force him into it, threaten his friend.
But then she bitches out at the end.
Exactly. Like, she didn't do it. Even though he knows that it's a very high possibility of people being tracked, he still gets help and tells everything to Thomas. And she doesn't do anything about it. All she did was get him involved.
Right. But I mean, that was something that he was concerned about the whole time with the alphas and whatnot as well.
Yeah. So. And she didn't do
anything.
Seems
kind of like the Marcone approach, where he's talking to him and he said, I'm not going to work for you. It's like, you're going to go up against them, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
I don't think she really actually cared who he got involved or why, so long as he did the thing.
even though she said otherwise. You know.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
It was
Well,
just
you know,
needing to
she's-
put on the show of being the bad guy.
she's evil. She's, you know, you gotta have a reputation to live up to.
It's going to be either she wants to be able to use the magic, or she wants to be able to defend against the magic if there's
Or
something.
she wants to have Dresden do something later, which she's supposed to be an ally of Dresden's in Mirror Mirror. We just don't know which Dresden.
Well, I mean, I don't know about how much she could want him to do later, because as much as we make a big deal about him having looked at the Dark Hallow, I mean that really only mattered when he had Lash in his head. And yeah, maybe Bonnie knows it now, but he doesn't himself really know anything.
No, but if she points out,
she knows
I did a
enough,
thing, I did you a favor of getting you involved, and now you're the Winter Knight, you owe me a favor. If that makes enough sense, then he might be obligated to her.
No, I think he's already fulfilled his favor. Like, that's
Maybe.
blackmail at that point. That's not like Fey level favor.
Well,
Like,
it was blackmail the first time too. So
right, but I'm just saying, like, you know, Harry makes it clear that they're free and clear. So even if you wanted to try and Fey that one, like, no, I can't imagine how that would work out as being like a you owe Mab a favor type of like, oh well, I better do the thing. Now it is possible that she uses the leverage on Mab and says he owes me a favor, and Mab says fucking do it then, or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, otherwise I'm like, no, he doesn't owe her shit. He owes her ass kicking is what he owes her. You know. So,
yeah, and I mean he wasn't the knight when that happened, so it's not even tenuous, that kind of connection. I don't.
It's a tenuous connection.
You know, it's one thing if
Very
if Mab owed Mavra a favor, you know, like she owed Nicodemus a favor, and then she could loan him out. But
this is the book where he switched around the whole Molly story, like because it was going hard.
Yes.
right.
So I wonder how different the story would have been if Molly would have already been his apprentice.
well, it would have killed the whole everything except future Molly is Kumori nonsense, and that would have been good.
Right.
Damn, that would be nice.
Well, maybe not. I mean, honestly, I mean, she would have been, you know, his apprentice, like either just in this book or, you know,
She would have been
like
Butters,
maybe
I
for a
think.
few months.
Yeah, she would have had to have been Butters running
Yeah.
around with
that would have killed
Mouse.
off Butters. God damn it!
But yeah, because it's like I'm not even sure he would have used her in place of Butters now, possibly. But Dresden, even in the later books, is very much like you stay out of the line of fire, and he keeps her on the sideline until much later.
And
Like,
he would have done that
is-
exactly as much as he tried to do with Butters, but then it would have been
He gave Butters the choice.
it would
though.
have been Michael Carpenter's daughter killing Cassius instead of future Knight Butters.
No.
And then Butters would have been trained by Mab, or by
But
we think
of that, it would have
become Winter Lady.
Butters
when
would have
Harry
been
is saying,
dead.
Michael, I need you right now, psychically teleport here right now, and it'd be his daughter instead.
No. You guys have had too much of the crack pipe this time. So, like, this
I mean,
is too
I-
crazy of a theory. Like,
I prefer the way it did play out with Butters being there and Molly being proven guilty, but
sure,
it would have happened.
we're in the brightest timeline, no doubt, right? But no, like, I know you got your hopes that Butter would have been killed off and whatever,
Well,
but
that's how I'm doing the story for now. If you can view the story as Harry still in Sheila's apartment, I'm going with.
well, obviously Sheila likes Butters because you know, he's still around. So
No,
and
he
her
ruined
story-
it for her. And this time it would have been Molly because she can see through illusions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about your what ifs and whatever. Like, one of the ones that I liked was like, what if Harry did take up the coin by now? You know, like, and here's another one for Mirror Mirror, where it's like, okay, so we got evil Harry with either the coin or vampire powers or both or more. You know, what does Deadbeat look like when they show up? Does he just not give a shit and they murder everybody and pull off the Dark Hallow anyway? Or like, how much more powered up would he have been? Because kind of holds his own a decent bit for what's going on. So, you know, he would have gotten the jump on them a whole lot sooner. Lashiel would have been a partner with him already, you know.
So mirror happens because normal Harry gets pulled into alternate universe, right? In order for that one to fake his own death.
Right.
Which is the idea he probably would have gotten out of Deadbeat. Kemmler, body snatchers.
Faking his own death.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
that's the first time he does it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Maybe,
you know, at the end with the Dark Hallow and
like at the moment where Morgan is just about to kill him because he just saw him kill Lucio.
Right.
Or that.
If that goes badly, it's like, okay, gotta kill myself, and so that they stop running around after me.
Right. Well, and I mean, I could kind of see that too. So, like with, I think it's Turncoat, right? He has the interaction with Rashid, and Rashid's like, you know, look at it from our perspective, and he starts listing off like the dark side of all of Harry's accomplishments. Like, let's just assume the rap sheet sticks in Mirror, where like Harry becomes that dark evil wizard running around. So yeah, even if Nega Harry was technically quote unquote the good guy or the anti-hero for Mirror's Deadbeat, where like he stops the Dark Hallow, but all of the wardens suspiciously die and he's the only survivor, they'd still assume he killed them, you know, so they'd still hunt him down and whatever. But yeah, and honestly, I think like that's more reason for him to be actually turned in Mirror, because, you know, take the Battle of Sicily, for example, right? They talk about how mortal wizards have to summon up the outsiders, and very likely, you know, they've either turned mortal wizards or have them as thralls or something like that. And so with Harry being a vampire, is he that guy? Is he able to still, you know, summon the outsiders for them and all this other? There's just too much, you know, there's just so much that gets introduced here. What was that?
Probably not if he's a full red. I don't think he can.
You think they lose the ability to do it at that point?
Well, yeah, once you're not
somehow
a human or immortal.
Okay, because somehow I had taken it that, like, because they make a big deal about, isn't that part of how this kicks off? Is like they take captives, and they were worried about them being turned. So
they'd be able to get information and other abilities, but that doesn't guarantee they'd be able to call outsiders.
Okay. Right, they get a wizard as a right. Yeah. They get a wizard's power, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, if you have to be mortal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I've just, you know, the vampires are also kind of weird, like the Fae, in the sense that it's like they're very close to mortal. So I just wasn't sure if, like, that's how it worked out in my head anyway. And we'll see. You know, it'll just be one of those, we haven't seen it yet, but
So during this battle, when they had to retreat through Ferry and the Red Court followed after, this causes the Summer Court to declare war on the Red Court because they crossed the territory. And at this time, Winter doesn't do anything because Mab has Leah as a Shisicle.
That's part of it, right? But there was more going on there.
There's more going on, but she doesn't do anything. And it's obviously it brings about proven guilty.
Right.
I'm forgetting something, and I can't remember what because I've forgotten it.
I'm with you, because like, what was the threat to Winter where she couldn't act this time, right?
She wouldn't leave Leah, maybe.
Well, she didn't have Leah. She didn't have her knight. Theoretically speaking, that's like half her quote unquote potent fighting force as far as individuals go.
Yeah, and maybe we're just underestimating how much it takes out of her to stop Nemesis. You know, that she's got a bunch of her attention and power tied up in that effort as well.
Obviously, she's still having to protect the outer gates.
And she can't trust Maeve, even if she doesn't yet know at that point that she's infected. She knows she's incompetent.
Yeah.
And
so when proven guilty happens and the fire is able to happen in Arctis Tor,
Well, yeah, because like you said, I feel like I'm missing something because so like part of that kicks off is because Harry's able to light the fire right in the
Yeah.
heart of winter,
Yeah.
but that just means that the winter goons all fall back on Arctis Tor.
Yes, but that allows summer forces to progress.
Because it frees up
So-
front lines.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's like
Okay.
she's in a very long-term way conning Summer into acting more.
Right. Because Titania is withdrawn because she lost her daughter.
Yeah.
So
And Lily is trying to do as much as she can, and she doesn't understand everything that she's doing.
right. Fun, and I mean that's kind of fun too. Is like I really dig on the Battle of Sicily stuff because you really start to see a lot of that part of the world. Finally, you get to find out what the war has looked like for the last few months at least, and it does set up a healthy amount of what like there's more to come in Proven Guilty in that regard because at the end, Proven Guilty, you have the reward ceremony as well, where you find out that Morgan's really a fucking badass. He's not just a dick and all talk.
Yeah.
He does throw down with the Red Court and make them pay, and is very much deserving of the acting captain title that he gets at the end of this book. So,
There's also
what?
the whole incursion and like what happened at the hospital in the Congo,
Right.
because like they were prepared against magical defenses. They used gas and killed so many people. I guess I like it in a sadistic way in the fact that the White Council learned is like you have to protect against mortal shit too.
Right.
Just like using a gun.
Right. Well, and I mean, like Ramirez and Morgan or Lucio say, like, it wasn't the fact that they used mortals that threw them off because they've contended with that before. It was specifically the gas, and like they're like killed them wounded and asleep in their beds and shit,
Yeah,
So,
it's like bad guys are gonna do bad things and
Right.
don't underestimate them, which I feel like because of the sense of tradition and antiquity that the White Council generally has is that they did.
really, though, I attributed this one more to the inside knowledge, right? Clearly, Peabody or somebody fed them the location of the Congo. They thought they had a safe house, and the safe house was compromised. So, Lucio and them worry more about the gas, but really, I feel like that's a bigger hand tip and foreshadowing to, the insider because that's the kind of shit where it's like, guess what? We've got half of our remaining wardens all hold up here, casualties, in the sense of wounded and dying and whatever. And, if you gas them, clearly Injun Joe wasn't there, was somehow able to escape because he shows up at the end of this book and, again later and everything like that. But he's like their main healer in every way, magical and otherwise. So you'd think, hey, guess what? Half of my wardens are holed up here. I better be there. And for some reason isn't. So there's so much like to unpack in the Battle of Sicily. It's like half of the chapter, but you get, like, wasn't it? So the Merlin and Rashid like stayed behind to raise a ward. They held off the Red Court with a ward, and just it's like the fuck, and
There you get bottle caps
But
at the
they
bottle
say-
cap line at least twice.
yeah.
You don't see the Merlin by collecting bottle caps.
Yes.
Right, which honestly, it's like one of the most annoying lines in this book. I feel like, but
They get repeated by two different people within like 3 pages of each other.
right,
It's just a joke.
Within 3 sentences of each other.
Once,
Harry thinks it, and then Ramirez says it.
yeah.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was. If I felt like that was clearly like on his brain, he's like, I'm going to use this thing, and then maybe didn't catch it in editing or something. But
Well,
yeah.
that's because he's still in Sheila's apartment.
Right, true.
Or,
That's the glitch in the Matrix, like kind of like deja vu, right? Where the
Uh-huh.
cat comes by and then it comes by again. Like, was it another cat that looked just like the first, or was it the same cat? Be like, Ramirez is inside my head, which means Lashiel is inside. Yep, thank you. So
the ad in the ad in the matchbook that's in here too, right?
the
Oh, that's
phone
for
call came
Lucio,
from
though.
inside the house.
You
So
don't,
you get that. You get some about Ebenezer being a big badass too, right? Because he fights some delaying action with somebody, and You know, like you get to see like the senior council took the field. Like which one? All of them. You know, so yeah. And honestly, though, we're gonna have to do like a part 2 because we haven't talked about Ramirez at all for this book, and it reminded me he's my favorite character because the banter in Deadbeat is so much better, and Ramirez is a big part of that. So
There actually is a law we haven't covered. So we very well might.
Oh, thanks.
yeah,
Yeah, made that decision.
only because Ben says so, though.
I'm agreeing. Don't argue in front of the children.
Yeah, I think you're the child. Director, you look like you're holding on. What do you got?
Hang on.
I was just think this is the book that we get. Polka will never die,
Yes.
and I'm too stubborn to die. Thomas is too pretty to die. Polka will never die.
Come on, Gravaine's line, you from the beginning, right? So Gravane busts in the door with, it's like you'd kill me, and you'll have to say it because I'm not looking at it.
Deadly goose.
Yeah, it's like no, I'm going to kill you right here. So yeah, like just the whole like, where would you like to not be shot? North America, like. You know.
Yes, Moppet. I refuse. I deny thee. Go away already.
Yeah, no, already. Yeah. So that, and I mean, so many of Ramirez's lines, like I try to pull in from somewhere else because it's like you've got the whole like. I'm trying to remember. He's got one from White Knight. The in the duel in White Knight, right? So you've got that line, but in this one, it's always the whole like, oh man, anybody who knows their way around a Kusari is a nasty customer. And Dresden's like, so we shoot him. Damn right, we shoot him. Like, so yeah, just such a great, you know, like Indiana Jones moment or something where it's like, yeah, this guy's really badass with a sword, but I brought this pistol, so we win.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
and obviously,
like Marcone says, "It's like, what's the point of having free will if one cannot spit in the eye of destiny?"
well, and what's funny is I've been thinking about that line recently, and I couldn't remember who said it. And so when it's Marcone, I'm like, shit, it's Marcone in this book. Like, damn, I'm quoting Marcone all the time now. Like,
yeah, he just does a thing. It's like, I'm going to help you. How bad is your wound? I will make it worse if necessary.
Right? Is it convincing enough? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah.
Marcone gets overlooked a lot, at least in Dresden's perspective, but I don't think anyone else is underestimating him, or maybe not as much. And the fact all he does is like, I'm going to help you do what you do best, and you go stab people.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he built up enough of a cachet to get on the Accords by himself, basically doing that.
Yep.
Right. Well, I still credit Guard, you know, for a lot of that, and the Monarch, you know, he's just got money enough to get Monarch to tell him what he needs to know.
Cleverness to be able to use Monarch to do things that Monarch agrees with enough for them to lend her Guard.
Sure. But I mean, you know what, thinking about it, I bet you a lot of that is actually even Vaterung. Because right. I've been trying to think like, how does Marcone even get the connection? I bet you that's one of those. Vaterung is like, I'm going to bend the rules a little bit, and we're going to be like, hey, we heard you were in the market for a Valkyrie, you know, type of thing. Where it's like Vaterung is probably playing Marcone as much as anything to be like, I need you to have this much knowledge and power because we need Dresden to win.
Yeah,
you know?
Vaterung's doing the same thing that Marcone is doing, and Marcone probably knows it. It's like, I'm just going to help you do the thing that you're going to do best.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Marcone's total thing, it's like, I don't need you to work for me. I mostly just need to slip your chain every now and again. And then you just go rampaging around doing what Harry Dresden does, and people wind up dead. The right kind of people wind up dead, you know? Mm-hmm. So.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, there was another line or moment or a setup, but it totally escapes my brain right now. So. I mean, just the one, though. So,
well, Ben has already declared we're doing part 2, so you can save it for them.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of plot elements to talk about. There's the story structure. There's some ancillary characters. You got Rollins.
That I was going to bring up Lamar. So yeah, but Rollins is
again
good. Well, no, because I was going to bring up the fact that we were talking about tie-ins earlier, and you know, this is another throwback to Grave Peril. So. just the whole, like, I mean, I loved his wit too, you know, like, well, you're the wrong color to have gone to my high school. So, you know, and Harry whiffing the, you know, armed forces branch and whatever. So on his guess, but just the whole thing with the, you know, like, you know, before you showed up, they lost a baby a week or something like that. But after you showed up, they didn't lose one. So, yeah.
Clearly, see, the way it really should have gone if Harry actually had bad luck, it was your fault, and he just shoots him right there.
Well, you know, because every EMT is just packing heat as well as a bulletproof vest. So
Lamar went to that high school, but I wouldn't bet against it.
it is Chicago. No, I believe
he
it.
has that beat. He has that beat for the ambulance. It's not a nice part of town.
Yeah.
Rollins is fun. It's like, I haven't gone into the crime scene yet. You can tell that by the fact that I haven't arrested you yet.
Right. Yeah. Such a great line. And that in his little backstory of like, you know, hell, I've been in charge a couple of times, keep getting busted down. It doesn't stick, you know, and then his little story about finding something strangling a girl and Papa Murphy showing up with the rock salt shotgun. So
yeah, Papa Murphy gets brought up twice, not just once, but twice in this book. Because there's also the
Mort,
because Mort shows up again. There's
Right.
so many tie-ins. It's like a pilot episode for the Dresden Files.
and Mort actually has his powers because he's been practicing since Grave Peril.
yeah,
And-
and not just cold reading people. He's actually doing the right thing, and that's why he has it. Yeah.
Talking about Mort, one of the things that I thought was interesting that, you know, made it into my notes is like, so Mort gets the spirits to do the thing with the red ink, right? To find out where the necromancers are. And they come up with 6 hotspots. And for some reason, that's immediately not where black magic has been done. That must be where they are at this moment, right?
Or that,
And
yeah,
Dresden's
the
like,
number of them, right? Which is ridiculous.
right, because Dresden's like, oh, there's 6 of them. And I'm like, no, there's 3 of them. And then maybe they're apprentices if you want to get technical. But Li Xian doesn't do a lick of necromancy that we see. So, like, I don't understand that whole thing.
you
I
might be
felt
able to
like
just-
that was kind of an oversight. But
Maybe, I mean, it seemed a little like, I'm not sure exactly what they're saying because, like, this one is darker, so maybe that means undertown instead of actually inside O'Hare.
right.
And so, like, he had to go figure out what was it, and then he went to the, like, place on Whacker, and it's like, it's just a street. What the hell?
Right. There was a dead guy there, though, that one time. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah. So I think those are the places that were touched by the black magic. The black magic. Oh no, the black magic.
Right.
And so there happened to be 6, and there happened to be 6, you know, or 3
People.
with a buddy in the
Yeah.
buddy system.
Those buddies
So it
don't-
happened to work out, which
Like,
it's just
liver
it might be
spot.
one of those things where Jim was just like he does.
Well, we know for sure 2 of them can use magic, so you know if the ghoul can also.
Right. But we didn't see any evidence of that. So, you know,
The evidence is right there if you just have the nerve to see it.
I see. Yeah. I mean, really, Li Xian's entire contribution was the, Ninja Star for some reason and the lawyer scene, Jim's like, I need somebody to be eaten, like the lawyer in Jurassic Park, and Butters is just great. Like, didn't he see the movie? Like, come on,
Not only that, that's now two. That's going to be 2 books in a row with Proven Guilty coming up, where the lawyer gets killed by some supernatural thing.
There's also, hey, you just squashed that car. Can we go by my boss's house?
Right. Well, and the rampage, it always strikes me as I think it was 99, the Godzilla with anyway. Yeah, thank you. And just because you've got like the National Guard running around and everything as well there, and just Dresden's whole like out of the way, fools! Like it's like, yeah, just that is a rampaging T-Rex. Maybe you don't want to be here right now. So yeah. And how did they explain that to their boss? Like, serious.
They didn't.
They blamed it on Urgot.
Did anyone notice how the ghoul calls Corvus take a lord, and then Dresden assumes it's a guy switching bodies because lord.
Yeah.
And it goes from like that's the leap he takes, kind of.
Well, after
It can't be his corpus thing, but yeah, but he
of that person as a female, and I don't know why, and then it's revealed as a woman in Ghost Story. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I was like, do you think that was intentional or just like it's a girl later? Like he decided originally he was like it's a man, and then later it's like, it's a girl.
Technically in English, gender neutral is male. So
Usually, yeah. Well, and the thing that got me was like I think Lucio refers to the corpse taker as the creature, right? Which to me it kind of implied that it wasn't a mortal, and then we get the whole ghost thing. So I don't know. Like
Well,
somebody called it the
clearly
creature.
come back to life. So
Right.
Let's face it, the council really doesn't think of anything that's not a human or a wizard as little more than a creatures,
Yeah.
which is probably
Well,
part of their arrogance and why they allowed themselves to get gassed, because they just figured the monsters would be too stupid and run against the wards.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, that's what Gravane has his zombies do.
Yeah, but those are zombies.
And that's evidence of Gravain's, like mindset. He uses disposable bodies and up until the end. Clearly he can rise beyond that, but yeah.
There's a moment that always seems suspicious to me. When Harry decides he's going to die because Morgan is going to kill him and he's not going to kill Morgan, he decides to throw his death curse at Gravane. Why Gravane when he clearly thinks Cal is more dangerous?
Because Cal has contended with death curses before. We already know that. So, and Gravane wouldn't see it coming because he's a tard. Like Gravane is basically like he's like the necromancer binder, right? Where he's just like I get goons. That's what I do. And he was definitely Kemmler's lackey, and just he's got a higher opinion of himself than.
You think he's maybe like Kemmler's son?
Has a fedora.
Yeah.
Well, there's also
and the grammar correction, right? He's the first bad guy who cares about grammar, and it's like
there is a
hilarious.
possibility. I mean, we know death curses don't necessarily require a line of sight, but you may have to have a general idea of what the person looks like, and if you can't see who Cal is,
That's fair.
Oh, if he doesn't know the real identity, then
He might.
well, even if he, identity is what if Cal had taken his hood off, for instance, maybe he could have, because that's what he looks like. I could picture it in my head now.
well, like
You pictured a guy with a robe on,
I assume line of sight will like work regardless of
right? Like he probably could have done it if he was thinking like that way.
yeah.
But if
But
you
for
don't have line of sight,
And her death curse, she didn't need line of sight. She knew exactly.
But she knew the identity and like the
Right.
intimacy. Of
I was gonna say, like, let's see if we could say this without being crass. Like, she really knows Lord Wraith, like biblically. So
they fucked.
it got a baby. Like, shit, that could be that. All the links she needed is that she was pregnant with Thomas, and Thomas is half his. So that was the blood tied to him.
Younger brother? Thomas is an older brother.
Thomas
Yeah,
is not a brother.
she was not currently pregnant with him.
She just
She
had
had been pregnant with him.
Yeah. So okay. Oh, I see. So I see. So the death curse was a message to Thomas. I thought so. Rather than but you know what? It was against Lord Wraith. Was the point? What
And
you said was
considering she powered it through her connection to her children. That's
Yeah,
Right,
her
I know
bloodline keeps it going, and Thomas's bloodline is connected to Wraith. Also,
so Harry can have a death curse that's powered by Bonnie.
No,
No.
it's not a bloodline.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
I know
got no blood.
Yeah, but you're still
Jeez.
pregnant. You're still
Details,
pregnant.
man. And he's not
You
pregnant
think-
with her anymore. He got that
He
out.
and
was.
besides, assume for the briefest of moment that was possible. To what end does that work? Was he's going to kill an angel?
Yeah. Take that, Lash. He's going to kill her again. You know.
This Nicodemus forever loses any connection to. Oh wait, no, I guess that wouldn't work. Let's see. Endurial, but that wouldn't.
You wouldn't need Bonnie for that. If you want to try and make that death curse, you just picture Nicodemus.
That's true. I'm not clever enough to come
We
up
know.
with it. Right. Oh, you hurt my feeling. My feeling.
But you said it first, so
Yeah. Well, and on that note,
you know how Gravane goes like something along the lines of "I am the favorite son." Is he being metaphorical? Do you think there's a chance he's actually like
No, he was being metaphorical because he said I was his favored child, like almost like Ward.
Okay, because
Well, he was his first, so.
Because I was just thinking maybe that's why he's kind of like the weak sauce necromancer. It's kind of like it's his son. We have to let him join.
Well, I mean, if you take what Cal says at face value, he had nothing but disdain for Kemmler. He's just kind of using the teachings as a way to further his own, which makes sense with the way the General Black Council seems to operate. You know, they don't really necessarily, most of them, think that working with the outsiders is anything other than a way to meet their own ends. Misguided though that may be in the end. So Cal strikes me as arrogant enough to think that way.
Petrovich.
You know, face it, if he was a senior council member, he definitely got the arrogance.
He's not Petrovich. He's Darth Pelagius the Wise.
Stop it.
So
I've never heard the tragedy. I've never heard the tragedy.
he has so much power that some would deem unnatural.
I've never heard the tragedy of Darth Pelagius the Wise.
Yeah.
Go read it.
It's not a story that the White Council would tell you.
Oh, okay.
Well, we've jumped the shark, so.
Although I was actually thinking about that whole bullshit when Kimura was going on. I was like, but you can end death. It's like, yeah, then you can't kill Hitler.
Yeah.
But you also
I mean,
can't. You also can't kill Einstein. Think it buckles the mind.
And Einstein would come up with some kind of like force field to keep Hitler in the ball. That, okay, I think now we've Godwined ourselves. So no.
Checkmate.
Are we done with Deadbeat?
Ben said we're doing part 2, and we always listen to Ben. So
Justin said
there's still a lot to talk about. I mean, we didn't really talk about the Knights of the Cross and some of that synergy. We didn't really talk about Cassius at all. You know,
would you like to quote your little short happy story or something? I saw in your notes a happy fun story about Cassius.
Oh, the spoilers, that one. So yeah, the fun family story for this is that, you know, predictably I got family and friends hooked on the books and whatnot. And while my brother was going through them, he's in the middle of reading Deadbeat, and I'm like, blah, 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 something, can't remember the details. Yeah, it's so crazy, the thing that he did with Cassius. And he's like, what? And I'm like, you know, Snake Boy. He's like, who? Liver spots. And he's like, what? And then he's like processing. He's like, oh shit, are you kidding me? That's who that is? And I'm like, oh darn, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, because the whole time I'm like trying not to spoil him and whatever. And he's like, I can't believe you spoiled that for me. And I'm like, I feel really bad about this, but let me tell you, I have not spoiled anything of consequence, you know, in comparison. And when he finally got to changes, and he's like, thank you for not spoiling that for me, because I was like, yeah, that would have been a spoiler, like, you know. P.S. spoiler, there's a book 13, you know, so.
I happen to love it whenever on the subreddit it says, my friend is reading changes for the first time, and everyone's like, yay!
I know, everyone's like.
It's a spectator sport of misery and joy.
Right.
You people got issues.
We just, you know, misery loves company and all that.
There's another great Stephen King book, Misery. Probably the best movie out of them.
No.
Oh, no, sorry, no callbacks. No callbacks.
No. I let you have a half an hour of Stephen King. Shut up.
You know what? Just for that, no part 2 episode for you.
Okay, fine. I'll stop it. I won't make a stand.
Oh God, I'm ending it now.
Is misery